Hi everyone, you're at home with Melissa, and I thank you for joining me here today in the partially deconstructed kitchen that is serving today as a plant room. And what I'd like to do is to help you save some money by making use of some end of season plant sales. And hi little man, likes to help with plant things, usually by doing what he's doing there and eating them. Oh, you don't like oregano? Oh, goodness. All right, let me make some room so that we can see what we're doing by placing things all around with all the other plant paraphernalia I've dragged in here today and covered everything with. All right, the first thing I want to talk to you about is this. This is an oregano, and as you can see, there's a lot of dead on it, okay? There is. It's, there's a lot of dead stuff there that you can see, but there's a lot of green too. And if you look down in, you can see, look right there in the middle. Look at that, right? Let me see here. Look right there. Look at that. That's new growth from the roots. And this is growing from the roots. All right? So what you can see is, although the majority of what's above ground here, above the soil, is dead, there's a lot of new growth coming. And that's good, because this little plant was probably bought at half off, maybe even 75% off. And you bring it home and you've got all this stuff that's dead or dying off. And you think, well, that was silly. What did I do that for? Well, you might want to actually make a point of doing this, because here in Zone 5, we are reaching what's traditionally considered to be the end of the growing season. So a lot of the places that sell plants meant to grow outdoors are trying to get rid of their merchandise. They have two choices. Do they allow them to just become so pot-bound and neglected that they die and they just have to write off all that merchandise? Or do they mark the prices down, hoping for someone who's either really smart or really crazy to come along and get them? And in this case, we can be the smart crazy people, because I showed you the green that was grown up from the base. If you cut all of this away, okay, cut it down close to the soil, that will allow light and air to get there, and this plant will grow straight up from the roots again. Of course, you squeeze the edges, you can feel it's pretty hard around the edges of that pot. That's because these pots are only meant to hold the plants until they're sold and taken home by somebody. So they're probably pretty root bound at this point. And you're going to need to transplant it into a pot that's hopefully just a little bit bigger than the one that it was in. You don't want to go super large when you transplant. If you do that, thinking that it's going to give you a lot of room for a lot bigger plant, what it'll tend to do is the roots will grow out to the edge of that pot, and then they'll wrap around the outside edge of that pot, and it'll actually strangle itself. So if you go to the next size up and then a little larger each time you transplant, that's the way to go. And if you don't want it to become a behemoth, you can always, during transplants, trim off some of the roots and things like that. And you won't necessarily have to go to a much bigger pot at all, or you can put it back in the same pot you got it out of. Now with this thing that you got at this huge discount at your store, it being oregano, this nice little herb with all these green ends, a lot of times what you can do with these is take all of these ends that are still doing really, really well, clip them off, put them in non-chlorinated water, changing the water every couple of days, and you can see you might get new plants out of each of these, growing new roots in the water. So that's one thing you can do, and that can get you, what, hundreds of plants right here? In addition, when you trim the back and you let that green get its new growth, you've got another plant there. So that is wonderful. Right there you've got, for half or 1/4 of the cost of one oregano plant, you could get scores of them at least. Now, you've got this little fella here. This is a rose, called the Knockout Rose, and I don't know how much it was off, probably 40% off, because the original price isn't on here, but it says, hi, that the price paid for it was $7.31 for a savings of $5.69. $5.69 saved, $7.31 spent, probably about a 40% savings. And you're looking and you're saying, well, those flowers are dead. Well, you're going to have to deadhead those on any other rose anyway. You know, the plant itself is still really healthy. Look at that. Look at all the green. And then you can see the light shining. I have a pink light up above us, a plant light, and you can see the pink from that on the leaves. But the leaves themselves are mostly really, really healthy. This is a healthy plant. Again, it's not even completely root bound. Getting there, but not totally. You would have a little bit of time before you decided what to do with this if you wanted to just keep it in this pot, because it's not totally hard around the edges yet. But I'm going to want to transplant it anyway right now. Since we're in here, we're working today on things like that, this little fella's going to get transplanted somewhere. Now keep in mind it's meant for outdoor use, so you could just plant it outside and okay, you've got 40% off of the price of your rose bush, and it's the beginning of September, coming toward the end of growing season, but you still have some time that you could be planting things like this outdoors, and they'll be fine. They'll be fine planted out there for their winter dormancy period, and then they'll come back for you in the spring. Now, when you do that with your roses, you're supposed to cut them back. So here's something neat. As you cut them back, you can either feed them to your ducks and your rabbits like I do with some of them. I'm not going to do that with all of them, because something else I'm going to do with some of them is I'm going to take, and where you cut them off, okay, you've cut it back for the season, and where you cut it off, you've got the end that has that open space that's a fresh wound where you've just injured the plant because you've cut it. All right, that fresh wound, if you strip all the leaves off of it, up at least this far, but you only need to leave maybe 2 or 3 leaves to do this, you can then take and roll that little wounded edge in root growth hormone, and then just put that into a container with some compost, and it will grow roots. Check it after about 6 weeks. If it's grown roots on it at that time, you can transplant it into a pot of its own. One thing you don't want to do if you're growing from cuttings like that using the root growth hormone, you don't want to put a plastic tent over it like you would if you were trying to sprout seeds, because yeah, it'll get your seeds to germinate by creating that really hot, humid, no air moving environment, things like that. It's good for starting seeds. But with the cuttings, it's already germinated. You've got your green on it. So now if you put that tent over it, keeping that humidity super, super dense and high, no moving air and things like that, you can promote the growth of different diseases and fungi. So you don't want to have a fungus infection that kills off all the things that you're just trying to grow. So don't put a tent over it. Just put it in a nice little tray with compost. Keep it someplace where it's got a lot of heat underneath it. You might want to put it on a heating pad even. At times you don't need to. Keep it watered when the soil goes to dry out. You know, don't let it completely dry. All right, you want to water the soil. Don't water the plants. Just water down around them. Keep that soil moist until the roots sprout, and then you can care for them the way you would another plant. So out of this one plant that you already got 40% off, you can get as many plants as you take cuttings, as well as the individual. Now the individual, like I said, you can plant it into a pot to keep in the house, or you can plant it outdoors, or you might be in a situation like the one I'm in, where I know I'm going to want this to be an outdoor plant, but I don't know where I want it. Oh, so what I'm going to do is I have this pot, which is actually quite a bit bigger than the original, but it's the next biggest I have, and I'm going to transplant it from this pot into this. Take it out of the little pot, put it into the bigger pot, and this is the pot of the type that they use at greenhouses and nurseries, and they keep their plants in it outside for until they sell. And so when I put it in here, it has, as you can see, it has not only a drainage hole in the bottom, but it's got drainage holes around the edge. I might want to drill more holes around the sides as well, because I'm going to put that plant, the rose, into the pot. I'm going to take the pot outside and plant it so that the top is level with the top of the ground, and just allow it to live out there in that pot for the dormancy period. Make sure you have enough holes so that the water that gets into it can drain back out really well. And also, if you've got a lot of holes in it and things, it's gonna buy you a little bit of time in the spring, because once it comes out of dormancy and that growth period starts, you don't want it to become root bound in the pot it's in outside and die because of that. You want to have it so that it has a little bit of room to grow things and to let the water in and out, to let some of the little roots out if they want to grow through the holes, but not a lot, because then what you're going to do is you're just going to take that pot that you've put it in now out of the ground to move to where over the winter you've decided you want it to be. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put it in the holy pot in the ground outdoors as a temporary holding site, so I don't need to take care of it over the winter, and I don't need to acclimate it to the outdoors from in. It's already outdoors. So that's what's going to happen with that little fella. And again, I'll need to cut it back. I don't want to do them at the exact same time. I want to give it a couple of days at least for it to deal with the shock of having been transplanted before I cut it back. And then I'll cut it back and I'll try to get some more starts off of those bits that I've cut when I've cut it back. Then, last but not least, something I want to show you is this. This is a beautiful little specimen. Look at it. Just gorgeous. Looks like it's in perfect shape. Nothing wrong with it at all. And, getting root bound, but not there. That's perfect. Isn't that beautiful? This is an evergreen. And I know it looks great. Like, oh, I'd love to just put that in the border at the front of my house to keep my plants company out there, because that would look terrific. Yeah, it would at this rate, at this size rather, but you don't want to do that. Trust me. This is an arborvitae known as Arborvitae green giant. Another name for it is Thuja green giant. So if you hear either of those two things, they're actually the same thing. And you don't want to put them, not the green giant, you don't want to put it in a border, because at maturity, this little guy is going to be 30 to 40 feet tall and 10 to 12 feet in diameter. Yeah, big. So they're basically used primarily, I think. Sometimes you get one specimen tree in a property, but it needs a lot of room. What you see it more often used for is in a line as either a windbreak, property marker, privacy screen, that kind of thing. Because as it grows up, you can, of course, if you plant a bunch of them spaced out next to each other, they grow into a solid hedge, and you can keep that top trimmed level at the height you want in order to provide you with that privacy screen. So that's a really good thing to do with them. And if you want to start them, because that can run you into a lot of money, and I think they can grow like 6 feet in a season in height. So that's a lot of growth, but you're still going to want more than one of them, right? And usually they are, well, this one original price would have been close to $20, I think, if I did the math right. More than 20? Close to 20? You can figure it out once I get there. See, I told you I'm not good at doing math off the top of my head. But, all right, is there some way you can save money, have your border? Well, you can get this little guy here, and then you can cut it up into pieces. I know it's beautiful, breaks your heart cutting it into pieces, but if you take off, say, each of these branches, or each of the little branches, and again, at that wounded area, removing all the foliage from a distance up where it's going to be in the soil that you put it in, roll it in the root growth hormone, give it a couple minutes to dry up a little bit, stick it in your compost, and there you have it. You'll have enough for your whole border out of just one plant that you got at a big discount. Let's see what the discount was. Again. Okay. What was paid for it was $8.55, and there was a savings of $6.45. So we're looking at 40% off. Pretty good, I think. Something about 45% off. Now, each of these, if you look, you can see that they've got little branches on them. So you can cut off the big branch and put it in soil, or you can take some of the little shoots off the sides. Now, I'm going to show you something with one of these if I can get it off. Oh, I really stripped that. Didn't want to, but later on I probably will. See how I stripped that? That, you can roll the whole thing in growth hormone, but what you want to do first is remove all the other greens from it. Okay, you want to remove the green growth from the majority of this, because you just need enough to be getting the energy for the roots from the sunlight, you know, chlorophyll and all that crap. So, strip them, leaving just a little bit, and then you're going to want to, not with your hands as I'm going to do to show you because I don't know where my scissors are, but with scissors, clip around, because it only needs a little fan there. See, this should be enough. Right there, that should be enough. And then you just dip them in the root growth hormone, let it dry for a few minutes, and then put them into a tray of compost where hopefully they'll take off and grow roots, and in 6 weeks or so, check them and see if you've got root growth, and if you have, then come here, little man, you want some? Little man, come here. He loves this. In fact, if you saw the little, there he is eating it. You can't see him though, he's too close to you. But he's eating that little fan that I just showed you. He likes them. See, I don't know what I'm going to do with this either, because I do know that I want to get some starts off of it to grow little arborvitae for the ducks and the rabbit tea, because they all like it. Do I want to plant it outdoors and then know that I'm going to have to keep it cut to the size that I don't want it to exceed? Do I want to use it as a border? I don't know. I really haven't made up my mind yet. So I might do the same thing that I'm doing with the rose and put it in a pot with holes and put it somewhere to just overwinter outdoors. Or if sometime quickly before I do that, I come up with the idea of what I want to do, and it doesn't involve it, you know, eventually being outdoors. Now, yeah, that's pretty yummy, huh? He's chowing. Let's see if we can get him to come over here and see you, because he's just too cute. Come here, little man. Come here, little man. You've got leaves in your hair. Come here, little man. Little man. Hi, little man. Bye, little man. He's excited. There's all kinds of things around him now he's not excited. He just plopped down. He's been excited all day, so apparently he needs to take a little nap. But what he's been doing, he and Gracie, who just went up there to nap on a shelf, they've been helping me with the things that we're doing. So a lot of excitement for them today, and now they're napping. This is gonna go temporarily outside while I decide what to do with it, I think. Yeah, I think that's the best way to go, maybe. But either way, I mean, even if I were just to plant this out, savings of 40%. If you then cut it up and make little starts from it, you can probably get, again, scores of plants from that one plant. So in the end, you may have paid $8.55 to have your entire hedge. Imagine that. If you grow it all from starts, like I said, the green giant, the Thuja green giant, can grow up to 6 feet in a season, I've heard. So if that's true, then you're growing it indoors over the winter. It's not really slowing down its growth that much if you keep it under the right light and take the right care of it. Then you take it outside, all these little starts that became little plants, and then you take them outside and plant them at the proper distance. You can have 6 foot tall hedges by the end of next season. Or, well, it won't be a hedge yet because they won't be close enough together, but 6 foot tall plants, not bad. It'll look nice. You know, even as it's before it fills in to be a hedge, it'll still look nice. Or you can plant them really close if you're willing to deal with removing them before they interfere with each other later. You could do that as well. Things to be aware of with it though, if you're growing arborvitae of any kind, is that arborvitae are much loved by deer and rabbits, and so you're going to have to protect them, especially when they're little like that. And that's all for our video for right now. I hope that there was some helpful stuff there. We've learned that from this plant you can probably get dozens. This plant you can probably get dozens. This plant you can probably get dozens of new plants just by investing in a few dollars worth of supplies and a little bit of sweat equity. You can come up with enough plants to serve you, your pets, your friends, your family, and people you bump into on the street. And all for pennies because you got them at the end of season. So again, I hope that you found that helpful, and I'll see you next time here at home with Melissa.